Hi friends, Miss Kristi here, and I am so excited to be together again cooking in the kitchen. Today we are learning how to make homemade sugar cookies. It's the holiday season for me right now, and during the holidays, my kids and I love to get to make homemade sugar cookies that we can roll out and cut into shapes. And it only makes about 4 or 5 cookies, so it's the perfect snack to try. We're gonna have fun making this together today, and I'm so glad you're here. Now, the first step to cooking and working in the kitchen is to wash our hands. While I wash my hands with soap and warm water for at least 20 seconds, let's go over the ingredients and supplies that you'll need to gather to cook along today. The ingredients you need are 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of flour, 1/4 teaspoon baking powder, a pinch of salt, 2 tablespoons butter, 2 tablespoons sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 tablespoon egg, so basically 1 egg. The supplies you'll need are a baking sheet, oven mitts for safety, 2 mixing bowls, a liquid measuring cup, one-4 cup dry measuring cup, 1 tablespoon, one-4 teaspoon, a butter knife, mixing spoon, whisk, a spatula, a rolling pin, a cookie cutter or just a round drinking glass, and parchment paper, which is optional. Okay, great. Our hands are clean. We've gathered our ingredients and supplies, so let's make these homemade sugar cookies. We are gonna use our oven today, and they are gonna cook at 350 degrees once they're all ready to go in. So the first step is going to be to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. All right, while the oven is preheating, let's get started. So we have 2 mixing bowls for our supply list, and we want to take just one of them. I have 2 different sizes. This one's a little bit smaller. I'm actually going to start with the smaller one. So if you happen to have different sizes, grab your smaller one and set it right in front of you. We're going to mix the dry ingredients first, and then we add it to the wetter ingredients. So take your flour, and we need 1/4 cup and 2 tablespoons. So first of all, grab your 1/4 cup dry measuring cup, so it's gonna say 1/4, and we're gonna scoop in and dump it right into our bowl. Okay, and now we need 2 tablespoons of flour. So grab your tablespoon, it's gonna say 1 TBSP, and we need 2 of these. So we scoop 1, and we scoop 2. And then you can set your flour to the side. We'll need it in a little bit, but not right now, so just move it out of your way. So our flour's in the bowl, and next thing we need is our baking powder. So grab your baking powder and your 1/4 teaspoon. So it's gonna say 1/4 TSP, and we need 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So scoop it in and sprinkle it over the top. And you're done with your baking powder, so you can set that aside. And now we need a pinch of salt. So what does that mean? You're gonna grab your salt however you have it, and I just like to pour just a tiny bit in my hand, just like a little mound, and then you're gonna take your fingers and you're just gonna pinch it and sprinkle it in. That's what a pinch of salt means. Just pour it in your hand a little bit, grab a pinch, and the rest of it you don't need. and then we're done with the salt, so you can move that to the side. And now just take your whisk and just kind of mix that together. We want to make sure the baking powder gets all mixed in. Trust me, you don't want to have clumps of baking powder when you bite into your sugar cookie. So once we feel like that's mixed a little bit, we're just gonna set it to the side because we're now going to do our wet ingredients. The first thing we're gonna do is actually melt some butter. I melt the butter because it makes it easier to mix it, so I like to have things that are a little bit easy to do. So this is what I'm gonna do for this recipe. We need 2 tablespoons of butter. If you look at your butter, if you have a stick of butter like I do, there's little lines on your butter, and those represent tablespoons. So I'm gonna look for 2 lines, and I'm gonna cut 2 tablespoons of butter and drop it right into your liquid measuring cup. And that's how we're gonna melt it. But first, let's get 2 tablespoons cut. So you're gonna grab your butter knife, find where it says 2/TBSP on your butter or 2 lines, and we're just going to cut 2 tablespoons and drop it into your liquid measuring cup. And then I'm just gonna microwave it for 30 seconds to get it where we can then mix with it. Because right now it'd be really hard to mix, it's hard, it's a rock. So I'm gonna melt it and that'll make it easier to cook with. Okay, so grab your butter and let's pop it into the microwave for 30 seconds. All right, so we microwaved our butter for about 30 seconds to soften it. It makes it easier to work with, which is why I like to do that. Take your next mixing bowl, so our empty one, and you're just gonna take your butter and pour it right in to that bowl. Okay, and set your measuring cup to the side because we're gonna use that in a minute with our egg, but not just yet. So now that we have our butter in our bowl, we need 2 tablespoons of sugar. So grab your tablespoon again, we've already used it, we're gonna use it again. It's 1 TBSP, the big one. And we need 2 tablespoons of a white sugar. So I have cane sugar, you can use granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons. There's 1 and 2. Okay, you're done with the sugar for now. All right, and then take your whisk again and you're just gonna kind of get this all mixed together, which you can see why we wanted our butter to be a little bit soft or else it's not gonna mix well with our sugar, okay? So I'm just kind of taking my whisk and smushing it all together, getting a nice creamy consistency. All right, once you feel like your butter is pretty mixed and it's not a big chunk anymore, we are gonna add our egg. We need just 1 tablespoon of egg. So if you crack an egg and use the whole thing, that's gonna be more than what we need. So let's talk about how to do this. Take an egg and your liquid measuring cup. It's gonna make your life easier. We're gonna crack it right into there, okay? So we're gonna crack 1 egg into a liquid measuring cup. And put that to the side. Take your whisk, the same one we used, and you just kind of want to mix it together. Again, if your whisk is too big for your measuring cup, you can always use a fork and mix it. We just kind of want to get the yolk all mixed in. And now we just need a tablespoon of this. Because we're only making 4 or 5 cookies, we don't need the whole egg. So you have to be a little bit careful at this part because if you pour too much in, it might change our snack a little bit. Grab your 1 tablespoon, 1 TBSP, the big one, and you're just gonna carefully pour and measure 1 tablespoon of this egg. That's all we need, to the best of your ability, because it's a little bit runny, so it can be tricky, but all we need is a tablespoon. And that's it, so pretty easy. We cracked it into a measuring cup, and we measured it, and now we can keep going. All right, take your whisk, kind of mix that again in together. And our last ingredient before we add our flour back in is 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay, so grab your vanilla extract. Yours is probably in a little bottle, mine's just in this bigger one to make it easy to see. 1/4 teaspoon, so 1/4 TSP. And carefully, you can either, well, you could dunk it if yours is a big one like this, but we'll pour it because you'll probably have to pour yours. So just real careful. You don't want a ton of vanilla flavor, just a little bit. 1/4 teaspoon right in to our bowl. And you're done with that. All right, mix this together. And now you can put your whisk to the side because we're done with the whisk. And now we're gonna grab our mixing spoon. So you can use like a regular spoon like you would for cereal, or if you have a smaller one like this, you just don't need a huge one because we're not making a lot of dough. We're gonna take half of our flour mixture and pour it into this, stir it, and then pour the rest in. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Just gonna measure half. Give it a stir. Kind of want to get it mixed in with this wet ingredients. And then when it's kind of mixed in together, you're going to pour the rest of that in there. And believe it or not, once we're done mixing, this is going to end up looking like sugar cookie dough that we're then going to quick roll out to make our homemade sugar cookies. So you're just kind of mixing this together. And it might take a minute to come together as dough. And if you really wanted to, and your hands are still clean, you could put your hands in here and mix it with your hands. If you like doing that, go for it. Your cookies, you can mix it however you want. I'm gonna scrape down my spoon because it gets a little bit sticky. All right, and it's starting to come together like dough. All right, I'm actually going to use my hands because it can be sometimes a little bit easier and my hands are clean. I'm just gonna kind of squish it together a little bit. And you kind of want it to get into like a ball of dough. See, look at that. Turned out. All right, I'm gonna set this in here, and the next step is I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour onto the counter because we need to roll these out. So let me move this to the side. And I told you we were gonna use our flour again, so I'm just gonna take my flour and you just sprinkle a little bit on whatever you're working on, your work surface, because that way it doesn't stick. Because if we did this right on here without flour, our poor little cookies would stick to the counter and never make it to the baking sheet. So I just put a little bit of flour on my counter. Make sure your counter's clean, that's important, but it should be because we were working on it already. And grab your rolling pin that we had in our supply list. And I'm kind of just taking my hand with a little bit of flour on it and rubbing it on here too. Again, it's so the cookies don't stick. Grab your dough, plop it on your counter, and now we're just gonna roll it out. I like to kind of flip it over a few times just because that way it doesn't stick the rolling pin. And then you're just gonna take your rolling pin and you're gonna roll it. And our goal is to make it the same thickness the whole way. And if you don't have a rolling pin, that doesn't mean you can't make these cookies. You could really just use your hand and flatten out as best as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. When you cook for yourself, you can make those choices and you can make it work. These are your cookies that don't have to be perfect. And if you don't have a rolling pin and you want to make these, you could use a can of vegetables, anything round really, or you could just kind of flatten it with your hand. A rolling pin does make your life a little bit easier, but it's not necessary to make them. All right, so this is kind of what we want it to look like. It's a nice flat surface here. I'm gonna put my rolling pin to the side because we're done with that. Now, in our ingredient and supply list, we talked about having a cookie cutter or a glass. Basically, it's just whatever shape you want your cookies to be. If you just want round sugar cookies, you can use a glass, and then we'll flip it upside down and cut a couple with that. Or if you have like cookie cutters at home, you can use a cookie cutter. This is a little snowman. It's the holiday season, it's winter almost, so we're gonna use one snowman and a couple of these. So basically from here, you're just gonna take your cookie cutter or your glass, and you're gonna place it on there, and then going to cut them out. And depending on how big your glass is how many cookies you will make. I kind of like to cut them all and then to put them on the baking sheet. I think we might get just about 4. Like I said, this is a smaller batch. A lot of sugar cookie recipes will call for, like they'll end up making like 24 or 48 cookies, which is a lot. I like to make smaller snacks. I don't want to have a ton of cookies around my house. I just want a couple. So this is a smaller snack, which is perfect. And you can see it only made 4 cookies. So I like that. All right, now you're gonna grab your spatula and make sure your baking sheet is next to you. So spatula and baking sheet. I've put my parchment paper down. You don't have to have it, it's optional. It just helps it so your cookies don't stick. If you don't have parchment paper, you don't have to use it. But grab your spatula, and then I carefully just like remove the dough that we're not gonna use, and just carefully take your spatula and scoop out your cookie. This is where the flour comes in handy so that your cookies aren't sticking to whatever workspace you're working on. And you just carefully scoop them up. And when you use a glass, they're just all perfectly round and the same size, which is fun. Makes them cook evenly. So getting them out. And then we have our little snowman here that I used with the cookie cutter. And now I've just spaced them evenly on my cookie sheet. You want to give them enough room where they're not going to stick together, so you can kind of see they're spaced out nicely. And now there is a little bit of extra dough. So if you wanted to ball it up again, you know, flatten it out and roll out and maybe make 1 or 2 more cookies, totally up to you. I just wanted 4, so I'll just end up throwing this dough away. But if you want to make it into a ball, roll it out, you can make some more cookies. But here we have our yummy little 4 cookies that we've made. I'm gonna put them in the oven and set a 12-minute timer. That's all the time they need is 12 minutes, and then we'll take them out and we'll let them cool for 2 minutes, okay? So let's get them in the oven. All right, friends, as you can hear, our 12-minute timer just went off. So step 1 is gonna be turn off the oven and put on our oven mitts for safety because the pan is gonna be very hot. Then I'm gonna take them out. I have a little pot holder here to protect my counter, and we're gonna let them cool for 2 minutes. So turn our oven off, put our oven mitts on, and take them out and let them cool for 2 minutes. It's been about 2 minutes and our cookies have cooled. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that your cookie sheet is no longer hot to touch. So that's really what we're waiting for. My cookie sheet has cooled, so I have just a plate here, and I'm just gonna put them on a plate, and they smell really good. I wish you could smell them, but hopefully you are making them with me and you can smell them yourself. And here we have it, homemade sugar cookies that we got to roll out and cut out into fun shapes. Now you could even take it to another step and decorate it if you had frosting at home or sprinkles. That's the joy of cooking for yourself. You get to make those choices. So if you wanted to go further and decorate them, that would be really good too. So I do hope you try and make these or try and make them again. And when you do, let me know how it goes. I love getting to hear from you. So leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions. You can even send me a picture of how your sugar cookies turned out. I would love to get to see them. And maybe we'll even get to share it on next week's episode. Now, speaking of next week, on next week's episode, which is episode 17, we're learning how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. But the twist with this sandwich is we actually make it in the oven, which makes it super simple, and it turns out golden and crunchy and cheesy, and it's just really easy to make. In order to cook along and make this yummy grilled cheese sandwich next week, these are the ingredients that you'll need to have in your kitchen. 2 slices of sandwich bread, 2 slices of cheese, half a tablespoon of butter. Well friends, our time together today is almost over. I do hope you've enjoyed learning how to make these yummy sugar cookies. I know I had fun and I already can't wait to cook together again next time. But before you say goodbye to this episode, make sure to click subscribe if you haven't already. Just have to click the little picture of me in the corner. That way you don't miss next week's episode. It'll be out on Friday, and I'll see you then. Bye friends.